Trust Nintendo. Months of waiting on tenterhooks for the merest morsels of information on the Switch successor console, and they spring on us an interactive alarm clock. Yes, Alarmo is here. However, while this might not quite be the reveal of people's dreams, there are some quite interesting takeaways from this that I don't think you should sleep on. So settle in and let's deep dive 5 key takeaways from the Alarmo reveal. Takeaway number 1, Technology Development Group number 1. Yep, you heard me. Technology Development Group number 1 are behind this product, as stated in the developer interview accompanying this release. And as ever, the developer interviews remain by far the most exciting regular feature Nintendo offer on their website and feel like a true successor to the Iwata Asks format, which even Iwata himself said that towards the end of his time was becoming tired. But who are Technology Development Group number 1, you may ask? Well, I am certainly intrigued, because while we know Nintendo have technology teams such as NERD in Paris, plus a team operating out of Redmond, Washington called Nintendo Technology Development, which operates as a wholly owned subsidiary. And we often talk about NST or Nintendo Software Technology, the team behind works as diverse as Wave Race, F-Zero 99, Mario vs. Donkey Kong and Metroid Prime Hunters, but of course there is that significant tech group out there as well. And of course they have internal tech teams in Kyoto, but I have never heard of them being called Group 1 or indeed Group 2 before. And if we go back to the interview surrounding the release of the Nintendo Switch OLED model, Ko Shiota was identified as the head of this department, which back then was purely in the singular. There was no indication of any other groups. I can find references going back to an EAD Technology Development Group. EAD, of course, was the Entertainment Analysis and Development Team, the forerunner to what is now Entertainment Planning and Development, or EPD, after their restructure in 2015. And of course, I've just done a massive deep dive on Entertainment Planning and Development, so please do check that out if you're interested in all the game development teams at Nintendo. But Technology Development Group 1 suggests a few things. Firstly, it suggests they have at least 2 technology development groups that are separate from the game development crew. One is doubtless for the Switch successor console and other hardware iterations, but of course Nintendo does have quite a lot of technologically intensive projects that are emerging at the moment, such as bespoke tech for the theme park attractions and for the museum. But it also opens up a possibility I've discussed in another recent video, that we could see a much higher level of Nintendo creative technology uses and add-ons to the next console. The Wii and Wii U era was packed with these kinds of weird technological add-ons, but the Switch era has seen the company play it much straighter. Now sure, we've had a Pilates ring game and weird stuff like Labo and Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, but over an 8-year lifespan it's been relatively modest. But these were very much second-string projects as well. We focus a lot on game design, but the potential for other kinds of technological and toy-like designs to factor into the way we play is something I'm sure Nintendo are considering very carefully, and the implication of Group 1 is that they have at least 1, but for all we know, 3 or 4 different tech teams now, suggesting the scale of their ambitions and their commitment to research. After all, we know that Alarmo has been 10, 15, possibly years in development, because this quality of life project was something that they were researching even under Satoru Iwata. What's curious here is that Tetsuya Akama's background is not really just in developing devices like consoles, but in designs for things like the Joy-Con wheel, the Pro Controller, and the Joy-Cons themselves. Of course, in many respects, the IR tracking functionality of the Joy-Con seems like a forerunner to the kind of motion sensing that Alarmo seems to pull off, and it may be worth us considering exactly how existing Nintendo technology that's been dormant for some time, from IR tracking to stereoscopic 3D to HD rumble, could be utilised in different kinds of toys and games going forward. I think this is a pretty exciting revelation, but let's move on to takeaway 2, the small print. The small print is interesting. So you can see on the screen here the small print for the American video, but different countries obviously have different small print. And here the gist is that this is available early to paid Nintendo Switch Online members on the My Nintendo Store website, and it's available as a timed exclusive until mid-January, as confirmed on the European version of the announcement video. I have said for a long time, and as recently as Monday's video, that Nintendo needs to think about safeguarding its Nintendo Switch Online subscription base, and while this particular announcement might not be exactly what many players would have had in mind, it does serve two very important roles. Firstly, it reminds players that there are exclusive features and offers that are available when you are a member of NSO, and it does have benefits beyond the obvious. But secondly, it gives Nintendo a perfect opportunity for a dry run for something else that they might want to allow special access to for NSO members, specifically exclusive access to the Switch successor console. Now, I don't think they'll go down the route on day one of making it available primarily to Nintendo Switch Online owners, not if they can help it. Their whole thing was to stop scalping and to prevent this being a problem, and that's not really helped if NSO members are getting it early. But if we get into a situation like we saw in 2017 or even in spring 2020, where the Switches were so rationed that they had to turn to lotteries, either through the My Nintendo Store or through their retail partners to allow people to be able to access the systems at all, then I would expect Nintendo to look to prioritise delivering Switches to their most loyal customers. And that's not just to reward them for being members of the service, but also because, quite pragmatically, those are the people most likely to play a ton of games, and so those are the kinds of people you want owning your console early, because they're going to buy all the games that you put out. Takeaway 3 then, the games. I was fascinated by the choices of games that they have highlighted in the launch lineup for Alarmo. On the one hand, yes, they're classic evergreen titles, so it's no surprise, but it's striking that they're pushing Super Mario Odyssey this late into the generation, and it's intriguing that they went with Breath of the Wild rather than Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild, of course, has better sales, continues to sell better, and is in many respects more iconic than Tears of the Kingdom, just because it was there at the dawn of the Nintendo Switch, but it still feels odd. Splatoon 3 is the least surprising, since it is the most recent Splatoon game, and we know that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Animal Crossing New Horizon are on the way, which also won't surprise anyone. But, oh my goodness, is that Pikmin 4 standing shoulder to shoulder with the Evergreens? I think this more than anything shows that they see Pikmin as having broad crossover appeal. Even if it's not the biggest game seller, I think they will be very interested indeed to see which Alarmo clock faces prove particularly popular. And if there are a lot of people waking up to Pikmin every morning, that is just bound to raise the profile of the franchise in a massive way. I also think Ring Fit Adventure is a very intriguing choice. Now, partly they might have chosen this because the developers seem to have some crossover with the Ring Fit Adventure team. The Nintendo Ask the Developer interview reveals that Yosuke Tamori worked with EPG4 on Nintendo Labo, and of course the same team worked on Ring Fit Adventure, although it seems to be a different group within that team. Now, Tamori-san himself didn't actually have a credit on Ring Fit Adventure, but it stands to reason that it's still a project he likely has a fondness for if his team was working on it. Ultimately, though, I think this is a reflection of the huge popularity of Ring Fit Adventure, plus I guess that game's high price point makes it one that is worth Nintendo pushing, since it's going to be a valuable seller for them. Another reason for this to be significant, of course, is that the kinds of people interested in a lifestyle product like Alarmo are also more likely to be interested in something like Ring Fit Adventure, and so the potential to cross-sell is high. But above all, it makes me think that Ring Fit Adventure is going to continue as a franchise and continue to be quite big for Nintendo, since they clearly seem to want to put it alongside the big boys. It also strikes me as near certain that Alarmo will receive ongoing support for the new titles when the Switch successor launches. The next 3D Mario getting an Alarmo upgrade seems like a 90% certainty, unless of course the product bombs so badly that it's not even sold by the time the next system is released. Whether or not Metroid Prime 4 Beyond gets a nod, I'm less certain about. Although it's an ideal one in some respects, given it's an iconic franchise entry with a popular marquee character, I doubt the Metroid Prime 4 audience and the novelty alarm clock audience have a strong degree of overlap, and the poppy, fun, toy-like sensibilities might not intersect well with Samus Aran's grisly bounty hunter character either. I'd put a Metroid Prime 4 upgrade at only a 50% chance, but be in no doubt, this is not just an alarm clock, but a promotional tool, and I would expect to see multiple new additions to the alarm clock faces list over the coming year or so. A way to feature all their franchises together in one place and literally advertise every morning. It is, in a sense, quite genius, especially as they're about to launch new hardware. Takeaway 4 then. Nintendo's development strategies. How many times have we heard something like the following from the Ask the Developer interview? To refresh everyone's understanding of the motion sensor's characteristics without being bound to alarm clocks, we asked hardware and software team members to pair up and freely come up with ideas. There were ideas such as leveraging the motion detection function to recreate Daruma Sangakoronda, which is a kind of red light green light game, or performing music by moving your body in time with the rhythm. It was fascinating to see all the ideas that came out of this process. It was the first time anyone had worked so closely together between the hardware and software teams on the development of a product other than game consoles or game software, so things didn't always go as expected, and it sometimes got tense. But through this experience, we were able to rediscover the enjoyment of developing together, and it brought the teams much closer to each other. Now look, Nintendo has not always been big on canvassing ideas that broadly in this way. Often things seemed in the past to have come top-down, and Shigeru Miyamoto often seemed quite keen to nudge things onto his own track. But between the Grezzo team all pitching top-down Zelda ideas to the Wonder team coming up with transformation ideas, there seems to be a cultural focus across Nintendo's teams, at least with its newer game development teams, for saying, look, everybody is here, everybody gets to be creative, everybody gets to pitch in. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. Perhaps I'm doing a disservice to prior game development teams, and I'm sure that this kind of thing has happened in the past because it's a natural part of idea generation, but it definitely feels to me like there is a more egalitarian approach being embedded here, a more egalitarian approach to idea creation that has taken hold at Nintendo over recent years, and which is only cemented by this developer interview. Takeaway 5. I think this tapers down the chances of a Switch 2 reveal this year, but only subtly. Look, never say never, of course. I have planned, in fact, to do a detailed breakdown of likelihoods for a release window today, fully aware that the rumoured 10th of October reveal could blow it out of the water, but that seems rather pointless now that they've dropped this today. I don't think that Nintendo will overshadow the Alarmo reveal with another announcement this week, and while the speculation train will doubtless crank into high gear again, I am now starting to shift towards a 70% chance that it will be a 2025 reveal for the next system, with the likeliest period of time within that being January or early February, so that it comes before the February financial briefing, which I think is really the last date by which they'll want something announced. It feels messy and too tight for them to hit that briefing, still saying, yes, we will reveal something in the next few weeks, but not right now. Of course, Nintendo are, as Arlo always likes to say, kings of the left field, and there still has to be a decent 30% chance, at least, we will see Switch 2 in October, November. Heck, it's conceivable they could drop something in December, although I really do not expect them to. But for this and other reasons which I might go into in another video, I feel like the weight of expectation is subtly shifting now towards a January reveal, and probably now a summer release therefore. As for Alarmo itself, I think it's really quite fun. I also think it'd be really irritating after a while, and possibly at first, but I must admit I've woken up to Nintendo music most days for the last 2 decades, usually the Great Sea or the Breath of the Wild theme. Therefore I kind of feel like I should support this product, given that I've already effectively used something similar to it for so long, and I've certainly benefited from Nintendo's wonderful music to wake me up. The gamification of getting up does sound quite fun and a good way to prompt you to move in the morning, although I can imagine this getting old quite quickly. I'm also intrigued by the movement sensors to track how you actually slept, although I don't know quite how good the quality of this information would be, and it doesn't appear like there are sound sensors to track ambient noise and so on. What I don't really like is the LCD screen. Screens and sleep are not good combinations, and the whole point of a clock is that you can see the time. Also, while I think the price point is probably quite fair for the amount of tech in it, I'm still thinking it's quite on the high side for what's essentially a gimmick purchase, so I don't know, it's definitely intriguing and I'll have to consider it as a purchase, but it's not something I'm rushing out to get. Anyway, I dare say I'll have more to say on this in due course, but right now, thank you so much for watching. Please consider checking out one of these videos on screen. Thanks particularly to the Patreon community, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast. Sleep well, take care.